Welcome to the Crafted Closet. I'm Julie, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I created the pin tucks for this bib on this little bodice. And you can use this technique to add pin tucks to any bodice. Also, I'm showing you how I did this spacing, but you can play around with your spacing and the size of the tuck you take and create different looks. This one, the creases were made a little closer together and the tucks themselves are a little bit wider, so just play with it and see what you like, and I hope you have fun with this. If you're interested in this little dress, I will put a link to my shop below. It's WyattandPearl.com. I'm going to start my pin tucks by starting with a piece of fabric that is cut. In this case, my pattern piece is 4.5 inches wide, but it's cut on the fold. So I've got 9 inches for the pattern piece. I've added 8 inches to that. So my piece of fabric is 17 inches wide, and then I've cut it about 1/2 inch higher on either side than I need for the actual pattern piece, just to give me some leeway. And then I'm going to start marking our fold lines. So I'm going to mark every about 1/2 inch. So mark my first one, and then I'm going just a hair past. So I'm lining up the 1/2 inch line just so that I can, with this clear ruler, I can just see the line to what would be your right, my left of that 1/2 inch line. And I'll go all the way along the fabric doing that. Now that I have all my lines drawn on, I'm going to iron a crease in each line. So I'm folding up the edge to that first line. When you iron the next line up, you want to make sure that you're not ironing out the previous crease. I'm just going to go all the way along the fabric and iron in the creases. Now that I have all the creases ironed in, I've got it on my machine so that the peaks of the creases are facing down, and I'm just going to go one at a time and sew with a very small seam allowance, so about 1/16 of an inch. I'm also using a thread that matches the color of my fabric almost exactly. I think it looks nicer if you really don't see the stitches with this technique. And let's do it from here. Okay, so I have a narrow hem foot, or I think Juki actually calls this a hinged zipper foot, but it's 1/8 of an inch from where the needle goes through the fabric to the edge of this foot. I am lining up at about half the distance between those 2 points, and it's also just a hair over from where the hole in my throat plate is. So I'm going to sew all the way down, straight along that creased edge. see that that's a very narrow little hem on that edge. And then I fold down to the next one. And I like to have, sorry, you can't see. I like to have the pleats that are sewn already on top so that I can make sure that I'm not catching any of the excess fabric in my stitches. I'm going to do this all the way along the fabric for all the creases. All right, I have all of the lines sewn in now. We're going to press everything to one side. So I'm going to choose to press to the left, but you can choose whichever direction you want. I'm going to try and pull open as I press. Once I have them all pressed from the front side, I'll go to the back side. Try and press those lines open as much as possible. And as straight as I can. Now that I've got this piece of fabric all pin tucked and everything pressed, I'm going to fold it in half, and I want the center to be a area that's not tucked. So I'm going to find the center and line that up. If you decide to make your center on one of the tucks, make sure when you use your pattern piece, if it's a piece that's cut on the fold, that you don't include the tuck itself in your cut, because that's going to reduce the size of the pattern piece. You want to start at the stitch line if you're using a tuck as the centerpiece, but I'm not. So I've got my center edge. Gonna make sure all my tucks line up and that it's nice and straight. And then I'll take my pattern piece and just like I normally would, I pin it into place. You could also do pattern weights or however you normally cut out your pattern piece, but I always pin mine on and cut around it. Let's again check that everything's lined up. This is why I like to pin. I like to be able to move the pattern or the piece of fabric and the pattern around while I cut it so that it's at the angle that I like to cut it. And there's our pin tucked bib front for this bodice, and now we just sew with this like it's a normal piece of fabric. The only thing you have to be sure of is when you're sewing it down or sewing it to whatever it's supposed to be sewing to, that your tucks don't fold the wrong way, that they're all folding the direction that you want them to.